So a while back, I went ahead and took a bunch of mitered casing and assembled it using 3 different methods with the intention of doing a strength test. And I'm finally getting around to actually doing the strength test aspect of it. So we've got 3 sets with hyper hot glue adhesive, 3 sets with biscuit and regular PVA glue, and then 3 sets with just PVA glue. So all of these were assembled with clam clamps, and I don't really know a scientific way to go about actually breaking these apart. So we'll probably just, I don't know, wail on them a little bit and might get out a Bessie clamp and try and pull on it that way, but hopefully this will give an idea of what is stronger and what isn't. Pretty sure obviously the regular glue without the biscuit is going to be the weakest joint. Thinking the biscuit with wood glue is going to be strongest, followed very closely by the hyper. So we'll see how it goes and get to it. So I'm going to start off with just the regular glue joint. As you can see, that didn't take very much to break that. So now let's try and do that same thing with a hyper glue joint. So that actually even cracked the casing, but impressively strong, plenty strong enough to resist the forces of wood movement with humidity changes on 3.5 inch casing. So now let's try and do that same thing with a biscuited joint with regular wood glue. Oh, my casing actually broke already. So that's actually pretty impressive. I lost part of the casing, but yeah, so not too bad. I would actually tie hyper and the biscuit on that one. See if the first one was a fluke on just regular wood glue. Nope. So not overly strong without a tenon in there of some kind with regular wood glue. Biscuit again. So that's pretty impressive. We ended up with 2 pieces, and then in front of the biscuit in there, it's still holding on pretty tight to that biscuit, the piece of wood that was left on there. Do some hyper again. This does happen sometimes with hyper where it'll break off pretty clean. Still takes a pretty decent amount of force, but it didn't break any of the wood. Whereas so far with the biscuit, the wood has split on all of them. Regular wood glue again. Didn't take much. Biscuit. So that one came apart pretty easy. It actually did break the biscuit partially, but otherwise it was a clean break all across the wood there. Alrighty, last one with hyper. not coming apart. Finger joint broke. So right now it's actually split the wood in both directions there, and the finger joint right here is broke. There's the finger joint, and it's still split across here. So the two inner pieces of the casing broke off, and we're still holding strong on the outside. And I'm destroying my workbench. I think I'm gonna declare victory for hyper on that. We've still got wood hanging on there, and that was quite a beating to withstand. So all in all, I'm gonna say that I honestly think the hyper won. I mean, the beating that this joint took, and to still have it holding on, was impressive to say the least. Now sometimes with the hyper, it can be kind of inconsistent. Sometimes you do get joints that will just have a clean break for whatever reason. But the biscuit joints still very strong, but you can see like this one, there's no wood damage, no splitting of the wood. The joint came apart, and I know I coated these biscuits really well whenever I put them together, so it wasn't that there was a dry joint on the biscuit. This was the most impressive biscuit joint. It had wood hold on from the other piece of casing on the back side and on the front side here. Still some wood hanging on to the biscuit. Definitely not impressed with just clam clamps and wood glue. Not very strong. And then here is another biscuit joint. Can't see it really well probably, but this is interesting. On the inside of that mortise, I can actually see all the wood fibers from the biscuit still stuck to the inside of that cavity. So it actually shredded that biscuit whenever it broke apart, which is pretty impressive. I actually see some poplar stuck to this biscuit on this side, so that's pretty cool. So after this test leads us to the age-old question that we've all been debating forever, and that is, what is the best technique and joinery system to use for mitered casing? I think it depends on the size of the casing. The larger the casing is, the more expansion and contraction force you're going to have on the joint. My rule of thumb is if it's 3.5 inches and under, I'm very comfortable using hyper and just hyper. My rule of thumb is that if it's over 3.5 inches, you're typically on a pretty high-end home, and I like to put some kind of tenon in there, whether it's a biscuit or a domino, just as a little extra insurance policy. I just feel better about that. I think it's an all-around stronger joint. Sometimes with hyper, you can get some kind of odd failures. So just a little extra insurance to make sure there's a tenon in there on those really big casing profiles. I use the 30-second hyper with the glue gun. This is a Steinel glue gun, got off Amazon. I'll have links to all this below. You just use the glue gun and the clam clamp, and you can literally take the clamp off 15 seconds after you glue it. Whereas if you're using a biscuit and PVA glue, you've got to wait, at least 20 minutes for it to dry before you can take that clamp off. So With PVA, you know, regular yellow glue, you're gonna need at least a dozen clamps probably. Whereas with Hyper, you're only gonna need 4 clamps. I don't use the Porter cable biscuit joiner typically. I leave it in the shop. I like the Makita a lot better. That's what I use in the field. Another tip, I buy all my biscuits in a bulk pack. The brand is Lamello, and that is because they're the most consistent biscuits. If you buy the box store biscuits, you get a third of them that are too thick and won't go in, a third of them are too thin and let too much play, and then about a third of them are the right size. Whereas with the Lamello biscuits, buying off Amazon, they're all consistent and are what they need to be. So I'll have links to all this stuff in the notes below. Hope this was an insightful video and you learned something. Comment below if you've got any questions or thoughts. Thanks for watching.